Hello, third grade friends. I have been talking to your teachers, and I heard that you all were reading a really cool Magic Treehouse book about tonight on the Titanic. And Miss Cole and Miss Head and your new teacher, they have been telling me how much you all have been loving learning about the Titanic. And so Miss Cole wanted me to share a little bit of cool non-fiction facts with you about the Titanic. And so the cool thing is, Jack and Annie are fictional characters, and while some of the things in the story, they are true, Jack and Annie are fictional characters, and they go through different kind of stories and adventures. And while you're listening to them and hearing them with your teachers, or if you're reading it by yourself, you get to learn cool new facts. Some of the Magic Treehouse books have a book that go with it, and they're called fact tracker books. And they're kind of like companions, which means they kind of go together with the books that you're reading. So one of the fact trackers that you can find is about the Titanic. So if you wanted to check this book out in the library, there's lots of cool facts about the Titanic in here that go along with the story that you guys just read. And so I'm going to open up and I'll read a little bit to you. So at the very beginning, there's a letter, and it's to you, readers. It says, look, it's from Jack and Annie, look. Dear readers, we came back from our journey in Tonight on the Titanic with lots of questions. Like, how was the Titanic different from other ships? Who was traveling on the ship? Why did the Titanic sink? Why weren't more people rescued on the Titanic? To find out the answers to these questions, we had to be fact trackers. We went to the library, we found books and photographs of the Titanic and its passengers. We checked out a DVD that told us how the Titanic sank. And we found a website with the Titanic timeline and other stories that were told by people who survived the disaster. Now we want to share the facts with you. So get your notebook, get your backpack, and get ready to set sail on your own voyage of the Titanic fact tracking from Jack and Annie. So sometimes when you read things, it's kind of confusing, like, is this real or is it not real? Jack and Annie are fictional characters, but they're going to share with you some real facts. Remember, nonfiction means real facts about the Titanic. The Titanic was a real ship. Some things really bad happened, and they're really facts that can share with you today. This is chapter 1, the biggest ship in the world. In the early 1900s, there were no airplanes. The only way to get across the ocean was by a ship. In 1906, a British company called the Cunard Line launched 2 new ships. The ships were large and comfortable. They could cross the Atlantic Ocean in 5 days. They quickly became the most popular ocean liners in the world. Large passenger ships that travel on the open seas are called open liners. And look at this cool picture they shared with you. I think these fact tracker books are really neat. A few years later, news of the 3 new ocean liners began to spread around the world. These ships were being built for the company called the White Star Line. The White Star ships would not be quite as fast as the Cunard ships, but they would be much larger and fancier. Some people called them floating palaces. One of these floating palaces was the Titanic. Titanic means huge and powerful. It took more than 2 years to build the Titanic. Can you imagine doing something for 2 years? 2 years to build this Titanic. When the ship was finished, it was long as 3 football fields. So imagine a football field. Imagine Logan County High School. Imagine that football field. Imagine 3 football fields long. That's how big this Titanic was. Can you imagine how big that was? That huge palace of a ship? It had room on board for more than 2,500 passengers. It was the biggest ship in the world. Titanic. And here's a fact tracker for you. Titanic. Long as 3 football fields. Tall as an 11-story building. And room for 2,500 passengers. And think about our school. There's about 700 kids in our school. When we're all at school and all of us are there, about 700 kids. But imagine 2,500 people on a ship. Much of the planning of the Titanic was done by a man named Thomas Andrews. Here he is, Thomas Andrews. Andrews tried to make the ship as comfortable for his passengers as possible. He included several dining rooms, restaurants, and cafes. One of the cafes had real ivy growing up the walls, like a plant. They had a plant inside of the ship. Another looked like a sidewalk cafe in Paris. The Titanic had a grand staircase covered by a glass dome to let light in. The Titanic had a gym with exercise machines and mechanical horses. It also had its own swimming pool, one of the first ever on an ocean liner. Remember, an ocean liner is a type of a ship that sails across the ocean. Look at these cool pictures. Wow. Thomas Andrews tried to make the Titanic as safe as possible too. The ship was built with a double bottom. That meant that anything that hit the bottom would have to rip through 2 thick layers of steel to cause a leak. So he really thought through, like, man, I'm going to make this ship built to last. Nothing's going to get through it. And look at this cool diagram. There's a double bottom and safety compartments. Andrews wanted to make sure that it was super safe for his passengers. The lower part of the ship was also divided into 16 parts or compartments. If an accident caused a compartment to become flooded, it could be sealed off from the rest of the ship. So even if 4 compartments were flooded, the Titanic could still stay afloat. Andrews thought these safety features made the Titanic the safest ship on the ocean. Some people even called the Titanic unsinkable. Remember, the prefix un means not. So if something is unsinkable, everybody thought that it was not sinkable. Nobody was going to be able to sink this ship because Andrews had really thought through how he was going to make this ship so safe. Look at this next part, getting ready. Once the Titanic was built, it had to be tested. They had to make sure it was going to last. On April 2nd, 1912, the captain and the crew practiced turning the ship left, right, and in a circle. They practiced starting and stopping. They practiced running at different speeds too. After its sea trials, that means after they tried it at sea or the ocean, hundreds of workers got the Titanic ready for all the passengers. They finished painting rooms and laying carpets. They loaded tons of food and coal on board. Finally, on April 10th, 1912, Titanic was ready to sail. A ship's tests are called sea trials. They have to try it at sea before they set sail. Look at this cool picture, this cool diagram with all these cool information things. Oh, Titanic fact file. Even though its first voyage was scheduled to only be a week long, the Titanic needed a lot of supplies. Here are some of the things it carried. Oh my goodness, 36,000 oranges, 1,750 quarts of ice cream, 7,000 heads of lettuce, 1,500 gallons of milk, 40,000 eggs, 40 tons of potatoes, and 5,900 tons of coal. Oh, and I didn't see this down here. Look at this. 16,000 lemons? What do you think they're going to do with all those lemons? Oh, and 2,200 pounds of coffee. All of this was loaded onto the ship before the passengers ever got there. That's a lot of stuff. Inside the Titanic, and check out all these cool things that were inside of the Titanic. These books, these fact trackers, can give you lots of information. Here is a peek inside of the rear half of the Titanic. Turn the page to see the front half. So there's the front half of the Titanic. Chapter 2, Sailing Day. If you'd like to hear more and you want to know what happens, how the ship finally sank, And I wonder what happened to all those lemons, or whatever your question is. There's lots of cool facts in this fact tracker. So if you have loved reading about the Titanic as much as I have heard that you have loved it, come check out a cool book when we start back to school about the Titanic. There are so many more, not just this one, but other books too that you might be really interested in. Just come in and talk to me, and I would love to get you something interesting. I hope you guys are enjoying your school at home right now. Stay safe, and I hope to see you soon. Mwah.